Welcome to a new episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. In this latest instalment, I spent some time with Novavax's EVP, Chief Commercial Officer and Chief Business Officer John Trizzino, together with the company's Chief Medical Officer, Filip Dubovsky, after they had flown into London at the Jefferies Conference. Novavax's COVID-19 vaccine was our key topic of discussion, with the conversation orbiting around the company's 25-year history of research and development in influenza as well as malaria and its forward-looking plan. Now in the late autumn, pharma and the great British public alike are only too aware that this is the shift moment in the seasons, when the freedoms of that post-new normal, living with the coronavirus mindset could all too easily be swept away in a wave of rising infections. So it is that Novavax is keen to remind regulators and policymakers alike that its vaccine option offers an alternative. But time is of the essence. Be forewarned, there is background noise. Our discussions took place at the One Aldwych Hotel on London Strand, and although as quiet a corner as possible to find, the city's ceaseless vivacity yet found us at points. However, I hope you find the conversation as enlightening as I did. So this is Nicole Raleigh for pharmaphorum, and today I'm meeting with Novavax in London at the One Aldwych Hotel. So I'm just wondering if you could introduce yourselves for me, please.
Well, good afternoon. John Trizzino. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer and Chief Business Officer for Novavax.
And my name is Filip Dubovsky. I'm the Chief Medical Officer.
Nice to meet you both today, and I know you've travelled quite a distance, not for this sort of chat, I might add, but for the Jefferies Conference. So can you tell me a bit about what Novavax is going to be speaking about there or listening to there, your purpose in flying all this way?
As you can imagine, we have a number of constituents that we need to engage with all the time, certainly and most importantly for the company with our COVID-19 vaccine in hand and now licensed around the globe is for the benefit of public health. You know, we're working with all of the agencies on a country-by-country basis. And we're specifically engaged with them all the time from a regulatory standpoint and a policy perspective. But of course, we're a publicly traded company, and we have an investment community that we have to keep updated and informed. And so a conference like Jefferies gives us a chance to do that. In particular, in the U.S. and why we're here in the EU and in London specifically for this meeting is because we have a significant EU presence now. I think we have just as many employees in EU in a number of functions as we do in the rest of the world. We have a manufacturing facility in the Czech Republic for our antigen. We have another facility in Uppsala, Sweden, and we have several commercial, policy, government affairs people around the globe. So important for us to make sure we have a presence here in Europe and that our voices are heard and people are familiar with who Novavax is.
Definitely. Would you like to add anything to that?
Only that with our interactions with the UK specifically go back quite far. I think this was the country where we did our very first pivotal phase 3 study, and we confirmed that with a larger study in this investment. So, we like doing work here. We like the scientific and technical expertise we can have and now our vaccine is licensed. So it's a good thing to see the full circle go from clinical study to license.
Definitely. I just want to focus on what you said. You go back a fair way with the UK, but to come away from that going back a fair way, I mean, you're not a new company, are you? You're over 25 years old, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So what are your sort of foundations? What's led you to this point now with this COVID-19 vaccination?
Yeah, so probably most related to the last 10 to 12 years or so, where we've been immersed in kind of the vaccine development part of the company's history. And I think what's notable, and especially this is true for many biotech companies, we invest very heavily in our technology platforms. We invest heavily in our science. We're very focused on, what the benefit could be from that work that's done, and for us, that's manifested itself in being keenly ready to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? Come January 2020, you didn't just wake up and realize that, well, maybe we should come up with a vaccine for COVID. That was only possible because of the 10 years of investment that had been made in this technology platform, this recombinant protein nanoparticle, and then similarly with our matrix adjuvant. So, we're pleased that we could respond. We're pleased that we have a technology platform that can be leveraged, and that's the nature as an innovator. What we do, we focus on a particular area. We try through clinical trials and the work that's done in discovery and preclinical work, and then you have the opportunity to demonstrate that capability when presented with a problem like this.
So can I just ask, what was your focus before the pandemic presented itself? I know at the moment you're going to be working or are working potentially on malaria adjuvant in Oxford, but before the pandemic came along, was that your focus?
So not specifically, but I think those kinds of disease areas and related to our adjuvant work are, what benefit could we bring to our adjuvant technology? But we were working on influenza for a long while, and we were working with RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, and so a number of these respiratory infectious disease candidates has been the company's focus and expertise.
I think one reason that the company's able to pounce so swiftly on COVID is that previously they'd done work with the original SARS, with MERS, which is on the coronavirus. Right? So I think that we were well poised to deploy the technology, and they did that well. They actually started before I joined the company.
Yes, but your vaccine is actually slightly different from others on the market, isn't it? Yours is the first protein-based vaccine against COVID instead of a synthesized, isn't it? So it's based on an innovative approach using traditional vaccine technologies you've been discussing for not only flu, but also shingles and HPV. Is that correct?
Well, those are certainly areas we can go into, and we're working on all kinds of infectious diseases in the discovery space. But what we have in the clinic in the near term is really coronavirus, influenza, combinations of influenza and coronavirus, because that makes all the sense in the world to get a combination vaccine, single visit, gives you one jab to protect you against those diseases. And other respiratory viruses, like John was talking about, respiratory syncytial virus, where there's some new vaccines that are coming into play.
Great. So sticking with this, what's the sort of difference, say, to the layman who is looking at the latest sort of Pfizer BioNTech BA4, BA5 option against Omicron and your vaccine?
So I'll take that and I'll unpack it a bit, because the different technologies work in different ways.
Yeah.
So mRNA technology, as well as the viral vector technologies that have been pushed forward by Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, work by delivering a nucleic acid sequence right into the human cells, where the protective protein, the spike protein, is manufactured in the cells, and then your body generates an immune response. We have a different approach. We actually manufacture the spike protein outside in insect cells, and we lock it into the proper conformation. And then we form it into a particle, and that's important because to the immune response, that looks like a delicious little virus, and it's processed in the natural way it is. And on top of that, we add our IgG system. And the result is a vaccine which induces very high levels of neutralizing antibody titer. They're also very broad. And what we knew from our first phase 3 studies was that our vaccine was actually capable of protecting people against variants. The majority of cases in both of our phase 3 studies were variant viruses, and we protected north of 90% in those studies. Different technologies bring different things. We have this very broad immune response and a very durable immune response. And right now, so all of our data indicates that the vaccine that we've already deployed and is being used globally appears to have an immune response that's completely valid for the BA4/5. So that's the one we're sticking with right now. Now, we've done some studies with Omicron-based vaccines as well as bivalent vaccines. They work fine, but it doesn't really seem to offer much advantage, or really any advantage, over the one that we have a really large safety database with right now.
Brilliant. So your current vaccine, that's authorized for administration to adults for both primary series and booster. as well as a primary series for adolescents. So what's the sort of plan next? Are you going to be looking at sort of younger people?
Absolutely. So we have a study ongoing right now with school-age children, children 6 to 11 years of age in the U.S., and we're going to be expanding that study globally. In fact, I think we're planning to have some study sites here in the UK. Our partners in Serum have taken this vaccine down to children as young as 2 years of age, and it's found to be in their hands safe and immunogenic. So, it's our plan is to go down to the youngest children so we can expand its use. And, we have different indications and policy recommendations in different parts of the world. So in some places, we are being used almost exclusively as a boosting dose, as a third or fourth dose booster. In some places, it's more limited. It just depends when the regulators and policymakers look at the data, where they find the need for a vaccine.
And that's why it's important to parse that out a little bit, right? You talked about being approved. Well, for vaccines, there's a couple of different layers of what approval means. So specifically in the UK, we now just have recently received MHRA approval, the regulatory authority approval for use as a boost, a heterologous boost, meaning boosting on top of any previously vaccinated vaccine used. We also, back several months ago, had MHRA approval for adolescents, but what then needs to be done is it needs to go to a policy recommendation body, right? What are they called? These, technical advisory groups. In the particular case in the UK, it's the JCVI, and they opine. What we're waiting on at the moment is for the JCVI component of this, and that's taken a bit longer than we would have hoped and expected, given the current fall vaccine campaign. Vaccination rates are lower than everybody would like them to be at the moment. We think that with our technology platform, as Filip described, with now being approved as a boost to any other previously vaccine used, and having adolescents being recommended for use, that we would hope that we would have gotten policy support at this point. So we're eager to get in front of JCVI. We have not had the opportunity to do that yet and give them updated information so that they can create their supportive policy. And then that other vaccine, that other option of a vaccine being made available, I think this promotes vaccine confidence. Vaccine confidence promotes improved vaccination rates. So it's all tied together. And I think it's important for people to understand that distinction.
Definitely. I was just wondering while you were thinking, is there something in this delay with JCVI? Is it intertwined with, although pharma, biotech, still COVID is key, we need to do something about it. In the greater public, however, there is a fatigue. As much as there's awareness to rising and falling levels of infection, at the same time, is it relevant to this hesitation with JCVI? Is it relevant that the general public is not accepting, but accepting COVID? What are your thoughts on that?
So Filip and I have been in the vaccine space for a very long time, right? And I think that there are some things that are true and carry through attitudes toward vaccinations. And one is, it's hard for people sometimes to comprehend that a vaccine is there for prevention, right? You don't get sick and then you get treated. Yep. This is a preventive administration to help you stop from getting sick. And so there's things that go along with that. So why do people get vaccinated? They go get vaccinated because they're confident that a vaccine is going to provide that to them. So there's this vaccine confidence issue, and then there's vaccine hesitancy, potentially vaccine fatigue in this particular case, mostly related to the pandemic, right? I don't need to get another vaccination. And then there's fear, right? The fear of getting ill drives higher vaccination rates. So I think there's a lot of elements in play that we need to consider. And I think that's just behavioral relative to the consumer, right? On the JCVI side, what you have a governmental agency that's responsible for public health policy. So their job, as we see it, and is to make sure that the science is being evaluated the right way, that the vaccines are being used the right way, that the general public is informed by their recommendation about what should be done. And so that's a very specific function that they have, right? Should not be about procurement, should not be about, other unrelated factors other than what the benefit and the use of that vaccine should be. So you have the regulatory authority, you've got the policy makers, and then you have general education and awareness about why vaccines are important to public health.
Yes, I totally concur. I mean, we, before the pandemic, had this hesitancy with the influenza jab itself. So perhaps it is just, as you say, a behavioural thing. But that said, 1 million doses of your vaccine were delivered in the UK in the third quarter of this year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there's definitely not as far as I can interpret that, hesitancy there. So you must be quite pleased with that uptake.
Well, that's a good question. So it's been delivered, sitting in a warehouse, not being used because we don't have JCVI policy opinion. Yeah,
okay.
And so it's certainly a disappointment to us. And I would think, having vaccine go unused would be a disappointment to most people. We're eager to make sure that there's at least an opportunity. And the other important part of vaccine hesitancy is access. If someone decides that they want to be vaccinated, they want to go to their healthcare provider, they want to go to the pharmacy, and the vaccine needs to be available. If it's not available, it creates an opportunity for them to turn away and not get vaccinated, and that would be a bad thing. So I think access issue is critically important, and having that many doses available and not making it available to the general public is something that we're eager to correct.
Yes, it doesn't seem right. It seems quite strange. I want to go back to what you were saying about the exclusive uptake elsewhere. Can you give me some examples of where your vaccine has been sort of fluidly implemented?
Yeah, there's several examples where we can where our vaccine is available side by side with other vaccines, and there's an even playing field for policy place. We can see how people are choosing our vaccine. The best example is probably in Korea, where the vast majority of our doses, let's say over 80% now, are being used as for boost, and that's a place where there's a choice, where they can choose which vaccine they're wanting. And on the flip side, we see some places where the policy recommendation has a preferential choice, not for our vaccine, and that steers people away from our vaccine.
Do you have any comment on the news today on NICE's decision on the various Omicron, obviously the sort of bivalent, a lot of them, on the various vaccines that are given the nod and are not given the nod? Did you hear about this news, or were you in the air at the time?
Well, I heard a little bit about the news today, but here again, there's a lot of data and science that needs to be assessed.
Yes.
That sometimes doesn't get effectively communicated, and I'll kind of tee it up a little bit and then hand it over to Filip, because it's really important to understand. From the very beginning of this year, there's been an assessment going on about what would be the best approach to how to deal with the various variants, right? Whether it's Omicron or something else. How does this resemble influenza? What do we change? What don't we change? And we've said that we would need to either have a monovalent with the original Wuhan strain. We need to have a monovalent with a variant strain, or we need to have a bivalent vaccine that has a combination of the original strain plus a variant strain. And we said all along that we'd be prepared to do strain change or do a bivalent, and then we went and conducted a study to assess what would be the best under these circumstances with the circulating strains that we know about today. So with that, Filip can tell you about the study that we just conducted and the results we just presented last week at our earnings call.
Yeah, I mean, the point is we tested all three flavors that John described in our clinical study, and they were all equally well tolerated and safe. What we found, however, is that the bivalent would offer no benefit to the vaccine. In fact, when you look at the immune responses, the one that generated the best immune responses was our original one, and we think there's a scientific basis for that. What we're doing is we're focusing the immune responses on the bits that don't change, and so this high focus, we're able to be relevant for the emerging variants. Same with it we saw with influenza in our earlier phase 3 studies for flu. So it's a very similar concept.
Brilliant, thank you, Filip. Well, John, Filip, thank you for all that. Is there anything else you want to add to what we've been discussing today for our listeners?
I think, at least for me, I think it's an awareness that we have what was a relatively small biotech company that was an innovator of a very safe and effective vaccine to defend against the pandemic. I think the data speaks for itself. We're trying to communicate that message around the globe. We have a lot of dedicated people that work at Novavax that have dedicated their lives for the last 2.5 years to achieve this. We're proud of those accomplishments, certainly thankful of all the people that have participated in clinical trials around the globe, and we look forward to our ongoing contributions to public health.
I think the other thing is that, this virus hasn't gone away, and it's not going away, and people are still dying. And we should be pretty careful, because as this thing continues to change, we need to be on top of it and make sure we have the countermeasures available to avoid this.
It sounds like you're on the positive path. Thank you very much, both.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
That concludes this episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about other installments in the series, at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, and Podme, where you can find and subscribe by searching for pharmaphorum. And don't forget to visit our website, where you can sign up for daily news and analysis bulletins, and to follow us on Twitter at @pharmaphorum. Thanks for listening.